Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into something today
Yeah.
that, well, you probably don't think about much until it goes wrong. It's your smartphone display.
Mm-hmm.
And you've sent us a ton of great stuff about what happens when those screens decide to just give up.
Yeah.
Especially, we've got this example of a really beat up Poco M3 Pro 5G.
Yeah, it's funny how we just sort of take these displays for granted,
Huh.
I mean, we use them constantly for just about everything, but we don't really think about how they work or what happens if they break.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing when you actually stop and think about it. Like, our entire digital lives are basically happening on this tiny little rectangle of glass.
Exactly. Everything from, like managing your bank account to keeping up with your friends to figuring out how to get somewhere, or even just like checking the time. It's all on that screen.
Yeah.
And so when it breaks, it's not just a minor inconvenience. It's like this huge disruption, like a vital connection to the world is suddenly cut off.
Yeah, totally. So let's get into this Poco M3 Pro 5G you mentioned. What exactly happened to it? I saw something about bleeding in the source material, which sounds kind of scary.
Right. So bleeding in this context, it's not actual blood or anything. It refers to when the liquid crystal display or LCD starts malfunctioning under the glass. It means there's some serious damage going on, more than just a simple crack.
Oh, so it's more than just a shattered screen. There's like something wrong beneath the surface.
Exactly. It's kind of like if you hit your elbow really hard, you might see a bruise, but there could also be damage to the nerves or even the bone underneath. That's kind of what a bleeding LCD is like. It's a sign of a deeper problem.
Ouch. So this poor Poco M3 Pro 5G, it's not just cracked. It's basically got like a serious internal injury. And the video you sent actually shows the entire repair process. And I gotta say, it's way more complicated than I ever thought it would be.
Yeah, most people don't realize just how much precision and skill goes into repairing a smartphone display. It's like doing surgery on something tiny.
For real. They're using these tiny little tools, and they have to wear gloves to protect themselves from all those little shards of glass. Definitely not something I'd ever want to try to do myself.
It's not just about the tools either. It's about understanding how all the different parts of the phone work together. The display, the motherboard, the battery, and knowing how to handle those parts safely. One wrong move could mean you accidentally turn a simple screen replacement into a much bigger and more expensive problem.
Right. So finding a good technician is super important then. What should someone look for if they need to get their phone fixed?
Oh, that's a really great question. And it's really important. First and foremost, you want to look for someone with experience and a good reputation. Someone who's done a lot of these repairs successfully, especially with your specific phone model.
So don't just go for the cheapest option. I guess you get when you pay for it. Right?
Exactly. It's worth paying a little extra to make sure your phone is in good hands. Ask about warranties, check online reviews, see if they use certified parts. Those are all good signs that you found a reliable repair shop.
And it looks like the place in this video, the Sydney CBD Repair Center, they seem to check all of those boxes. Plus, they even have a mail-in service, which is pretty convenient.
Yeah, that's great. It means you can send your phone in from anywhere, even outside of Australia if you need to. And have it fixed by experts. It's a good option for people who don't have a reliable repair shop nearby.
Okay, so we've established that a broken smartphone screen is a lot more than just a crack. There can be internal damage, and it takes some serious skill to fix it. But let's go back to the different types of damage for a minute. You mentioned those bleeding LCDs, but what about those tiny hairline cracks you sometimes see? Are those as serious?
Oh, that's a good point. And it really shows that there are a lot of different ways a smartphone display can get damaged. And while a hairline crack might seem a lot less severe than a bleeding LCD, they can still cause problems.
Really? How so? I mean, as long as you can still see the screen.
Well, think about it this way. Even the tiniest crack, it weakens the whole structure of the glass. So it makes your phone much more likely to get even more damaged, especially if you drop it again. And those cracks, they can let dust and moisture into the phone. And that can damage all the delicate parts inside.
Oh, wow. I never thought about that. So even a tiny little crack can turn into a much bigger problem down the road.
Exactly. It's always better to be safe than sorry. Even if you just have a tiny crack, it's best to have it checked out by a professional.
That's some really interesting stuff. So we've talked about the different types of damage and why it's so important to find the right person to fix your phone. But what actually happens during a repair? What are the steps involved in fixing a broken screen?
Well, the exact steps can be a little different depending on the model of the phone, but the video you sent gives a pretty good overview of the general process. So it starts with
Hold on, actually, before we get into all the details of the repair, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back, and then we'll walk through the entire process step by step. And trust me, you'll never look at your smartphone the same way again. All right, so we're back and ready to dive into those smartphone repair details. I gotta say, I'm a little nervous to see what happens next in this video.
Yeah, I get that. Even though it's like a really common repair, there's something kind of weird about seeing a phone completely taken apart.
Totally. So where do they even start?
Well, the first thing they usually do is power down the phone completely and then take off the back cover. It sounds pretty simple, but even that can require special tools depending on the phone.
Right. I've seen some phones where the back cover is like glued on really tight. Seems like it would be easy to break something if you didn't know what you were doing.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to find a technician who really knows what they're doing. Someone who understands how each specific phone is put together. Once that back cover is off, then they can start disconnecting all the different things that are attached to the display, like the battery, the front camera, and different sensors.
It's kind of crazy how many tiny little parts are crammed into those phones. It's like those old-fashioned clocks with all those little gears and springs.
That's a great analogy. And just like with a clock, if one tiny thing is out of place, the whole thing stops working. So the technician has to be really careful and methodical every step of the way.
So once everything's disconnected, then they can finally take out the broken display, right?
Right. But even that can be tricky. The display is usually held in place with adhesive, so they have to heat it up to soften the glue before they can pry it off.
I bet they use one of those heat guns like they have at hair salons, but like a tiny one.
Yeah, something like that. They use a special tool that's designed to heat up just the adhesive without damaging anything else. If it gets too hot, they could ruin the battery or the motherboard. And if it's not hot enough, the glue won't come loose.
Wow, so it's like a delicate balance. They got to get the temperature and the timing just right.
Exactly. And once they get the old display off, they have to clean the frame really well to make sure there's no dust or anything left before they put the new display on.
Oh, so it's like prepping a canvas before you paint. You need a clean surface to get the best results. So speaking of the new display, do they just like stick it on there and that's it?
Nope. Remember all those tiny little things they had to disconnect earlier? Well, now they have to reconnect all of them to the new display, making sure everything is lined up correctly and connected securely.
That sounds so fiddly. How can they even see what they're doing? Those parts are so tiny.
Well, that's where magnification comes in. They use special lamps that magnify everything and sometimes even microscopes to get a really good view of those tiny parts and connections.
It really is like watching a miniature surgery. I bet it takes a ton of patience.
You got that right. Steady hands, a good eye for detail, and a lot of patience are basically essential for a good smartphone repair technician. Once all the connections are made, they can carefully put the new display in place and secure it with fresh adhesive.
So basically, they're just reversing the whole process, but it's just as intricate and delicate.
Exactly. And then comes the moment of truth when they turn the phone on to test the new display and make sure everything's working right.
Oh man, I bet that's a huge relief seeing that nice, bright, clear screen light up after all that work.
It definitely is. But they're not quite done yet. They still have to put the whole phone back together, which means carefully putting the battery back in and reattaching the back cover and making sure everything sits together perfectly.
So it's not just about fixing the screen, it's about putting the entire phone back together without messing anything up. It's amazing how much skill and precision goes into something most people don't even think about.
It really is. And it shows why it's so important to pick a repair technician who has the experience and the knowledge to do these really delicate repairs.
Speaking of skilled technicians, I noticed in the video that the people at the Sydney CBD Repair Center, they actually test the new display before they put the phone back together. That seems really smart.
Yeah, it's definitely a good sign. It means they're really committed to doing a quality repair. By testing the display before putting the phone back together, they can be sure it's working perfectly and that there aren't any other problems that might pop up later.
Right. It's way better to find a problem early on than to have to open the phone up again later and try to figure out what's wrong.
Exactly. It's all about making sure the repair is done right the first time and that it lasts. And speaking of making sure things are done right, let's talk about something that a lot of people forget: data backup.
Oh, that's a good point. You definitely don't want to lose all your photos and contacts if something goes wrong during the repair.
Absolutely. Backing up your data before any phone repair is super important. It's like insurance for your digital life. You can use cloud storage, external hard drives, or even just copy everything to your computer. There are tons of options these days.
So what if someone forgets to back up their data before they take their phone in for repair? Are they just out of luck?
Well, it depends. Sometimes the data can still be recovered, but it's not guaranteed, and it can make the repair take longer and cost more.
So yeah, definitely better to be safe than sorry. So yeah, it sounds like backing up your phone is like the first thing you should do before getting any repairs done.
Definitely. It's like your phone isn't just a phone anymore, right? It's like all your memories and connections and important information are stored in there. You don't want to risk losing all of that.
No way. I'm definitely guilty of taking way too many pictures. Speaking of risks though, what about software updates? Can they cause problems with the display?
That's a really good question. A lot of people don't realize that, yeah, sometimes the software problem can actually make it seem like the display is broken when it's really not.
Wait, really? So like it might look like your display is totally busted, but it's actually just a software glitch.
Exactly. You might see things like flickering, or the screen might not respond to your touch, or the colors might be all messed up. But a good technician, they'll always check for software problems before they tell you that you need a new display. And sometimes all it takes is a simple software update to fix the problem.
That's amazing. So it could save you a ton of money and hassle. It's like thinking you need surgery, but all you really needed was like a Tums.
Haha, that's a great way to put it. It's a good reminder that not all display problems are the same.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about why having a working display is so important, the different ways a display can get messed up, the importance of finding a good technician, backing up your data, and even how software updates can sometimes cause problems. Is there anything else people should know about getting their phone screen fixed?
Let's see. One thing we haven't talked about is DIY repairs.
Oh yeah, that's a tricky one. I've seen videos online that make it look so easy. Like you just heat up the screen, pop it off, put a new one on, and boom, you're good to go.
I know, right? They make it seem so simple. But honestly, doing your own display repairs can be really risky. Remember all those tiny parts we talked about? And the special tools and that tricky heating process? If you don't know what you're doing, you could easily end up making things worse.
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to rewire your whole house after watching a couple of YouTube videos. Probably not the best idea. It might work out for some people, but it's really not worth the risk.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, you could even hurt yourself. Those little pieces of glass from a broken screen, they can be super sharp.
Ouch. I didn't even think about that. So it's not just about protecting your phone, it's about protecting yourself too.
Exactly. So basically, when it comes to complicated repairs, like replacing a smartphone display, it's best to just leave it to the experts.
That makes sense. You wouldn't try to operate on yourself, so why would you do that with your phone? Especially when there are people out there who know what they're doing and can fix it for you.
Right. They have all the right tools and the knowledge and the experience, and they usually offer warranties too. So you know that if something does go wrong, they'll take care of it.
Okay, so the takeaway here is if you're dealing with a broken phone screen, don't freak out. Back up your data. Find a good technician, like the people at Sydney CBD Repair Center, and whatever you do, don't try to fix it yourself.
That's perfect. And it's important to remember that even though a broken screen can feel like a total disaster, it's usually fixable.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the wild world of smartphone display repair. We've learned a lot about how it works, how to find a good technician, and how to prevent it from happening in the first place. Honestly, a good case and a screen protector seem like a pretty good investment now that I think about it.
And next time you look at your phone, just take a second to think about all that amazing technology that's connecting you to the world. And if that connection ever breaks, remember that there are people out there who can help you fix it.
That's it for today, everyone. Stay safe and keep those screens in one piece.
If you want your smartphone fixed for a very reasonable price, you may contact Sydney CBD Repair Center. We also provide mail-in repair services for customers outside of Australia or Sydney. Just message us so we can arrange the shipping of your device.